Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Hope everyone is doing well. In today's video, we are going to understand what is adaptive and what is responsive design. But before that, we have to understand what exactly uh, the fundamental terms and what it means actually in design. Why we need what exactly the meaning of adaptive and responsive in design. So, well, to be honest, it's very uh, you know it's very least heard term, but it's super important topic for you to understand what exactly the adaptive and what exactly the responsive designs are and is. Well, it's needed because it have a major impact on user experience. So yes, you have to understand adaptive and what exactly the adaptive and responsive design is to design very flexible and covering all the different screen resolutions because it hampers a user experience. So yeah, every designer should be responsible for their users because ultimately you are advocating for your users. So you always have to be very cautious when you design any screen or any website or any kind of design because you need to understand what are the different layouts and for that what exactly the adaptive and where you need adaptive design, where you need responsive designs. Well, to be honest, most of the products are using responsive designs for their websites, but for the products who have like SaaS products or have some kind of functionality like using application or like have a mobile like feature on their websites, they might be using some adaptive designs because they have to cover they have to understand the user's perspective, plus they have to design in such way that it's more user functional, user can adapt it very easily so that they can use their products. For that they might be using adaptive designs, but like most of the cases you might seeing the responsive designs everywhere. But yeah, so now we'll also try to understand with example of a few current live websites, which will help us to evaluate how the responsive design works and how the adaptive design works. But before I jump into that, we have to understand some basic layout terms, which is grids and breakpoints. Now, what exactly the grids and breakpoints are, I'll explain in detail. So let's jump into understanding grids and your breakpoints. So, well, so to start with grids, uh, I have this layout breakpoints examples where we can actually see what are the layout grids are and how it designed and what exactly it means. So if you see here, this have like responsive design grids. Now what exactly the grids are. So I have pulled this from material guidelines where you can find this on material guidelines. Well, I think all designers should know what exactly the material design is. Well, material design is basically and guidelines designed by Google, and they are using this as their design library because they have everything at play so that you can actually refer and understand how the design system works. So yeah, this is one of the fundamental part of your design system where you define the different layouts or breakpoints for your design and use cases. So yes, we always have like a very compact, and then we have medium, expanded, and large, and then extra large. Now, what exactly this are? Like, what exactly the compact? What exactly the medium? What exactly the expanded? What exactly the large and extra large? Right. So these are basically our different resolutions, like a screen resolutions, where you are going to put your all design elements in this grid. Think of a notebook. Everyone is aware of notebook. What exactly the notebook is? Notebook is just a book where you can write your things, right? So you have numerous rows at, right, in your notebook where you think that that's the baseline where you have to write, right? So similarly, for your design, you need some columns so that you can actually design your elements in such way that always stays flexible when you're changing the resolutions, right? Because I always say in my videos, like we are not designing for a one particular screen. We are always designing for a flexible uh, design that basically help us to, you know, uh, keep our design consistent throughout the different screen resolutions, right? That's where comes your auto layout and constraints, which will basically help you to understand what and how to design your element responsively so that it always behave when your screen resolutions changes from one to another pixels, right? So now let's try to understand what exactly the grid is. So now on the left side panel, you'll see, okay, for example, let's say you have a screen like this, and then if you see here, you have like layout guide, right? So, well, this is something that help you to create your grids. Now, if you just plus on this icon, and then you see the grids, right? Now, these are the grids. Well, like this is the square grids. Well, it's basically there are different types of grid. You will see basically rows and columns, and then grid, like a square grid, basically this. And then you have columns. So this is your column grid, and then you have like a row grid. So this is your rows grid. Well, the common grid we'll be using is like column grid for all the different screen resolutions. Basically, I mean, because you don't need rows because you can like your because your screen resolution is basically expanding in a horizontal, not a vertical. I mean, vertical is just like a scroll, so you can just decide some minimum, decide some fixed width, and then inside that you whatever the elements is going to be, just like you can just scroll it, right? So that's fine. But like when you why the column grid is important, because we don't know at what resolution or like on what devices will be opening our websites or like applications. So in that cases, we need some very flexible design that actually stay consistent throughout all the devices, right? Irrespective of like what exactly your screen resolution is and what you're designing. So for that reason, we'll be using column grid. And that's very common. Well, and the most common grid basically we'll be using is like for desktop is 12 pixel. You have always heard of like 12 using 12 pixel grids and all, because like it have a like very larger and wider like width. So we basically divide into 12 columns because it have a fluid design, like a fluidity in their responsiveness. So to do that, well, CSS basically allows you to do such functions with the help of like percentage or like rem or m, because these are the very responsive terms, and this have some calculations included. Well, it's a just for responsive designs. Now, okay, so we have like somewhat we have understand what exactly the grid is, and I mean why we need grid, just to create consistency across all the different screen resolutions or like device resolution. We'll start with the compact, and then we'll go to the medium, then expanded, then large, and then extra large. Well, now in the compact we have like a 4-column grid, and then in medium we have like 8-column grid, and then in expanded we have like 12-column grid. Then for large we have like 12-column grid, but have a wider margins from left and right side. But we are going to keeping our all elements inside from inside this to this columns, right? So these are basically end lines of these columns. If I just pull this and if I show you. So then to here. So you can see like this 2 red lines. Well, these 2 red lines are basically as the end lines of your column. So inside this red column, all your design elements going to be, and then you decide like how they should behave when your screen resolution changes. So for expanded, we always and yeah, one thing to be always remember when you're designing a new screen, you always start with a mobile first approach. Well, the mobile first approach is like a progressive approach where you will be basically from lower to upper end devices or like upper resolution devices you'll be designing. So it's an progressive and progression design. Like if you are like designing from higher resolution to lower resolutions, then it's called degradation, because like you'll be designing from higher resolution screens to lower. So always prefer a mobile first approach, where basically you decide the layout for your mobile, and then you start moving to upper resolutions or like from different devices for like larger devices, right? So now we have understood what exactly the grid is. And then now we are going to understand what are the breakpoints are basically. So for example, when you're designing for mobile, you say like for usually the minimum pixel is for like 320, like from 320 onwards to somewhere like 599 dp. Well, I'll use the pixels because we have here pixels. So the least screen resolutions you will be designing from 320 pixels to 599 pixels. You'll say like from if user have resolutions between 320 to 599, I have this layout grid, which will basically going to render when they have opened my website or like open my application. Now, from then you say like from 599 onwards to let's say 1220 or like 1240 or whatever pixels you choose. In these regions, whatever the device is going to be, let's say for we are saying just example for tablets. So basically tablets, and then we say like what we have here for mobiles, right? And then from 1220 to let's say xy, and then you can say like not define, or like till that we are going to have like a desktop or like laptop versions. So you have decided these 3 constraints, and now these are basically the breakpoints of your different devices. So well, the breakpoints is basically going to be something when your layouts change at some extent or like at some point, right? Because you have very you have very specific design for mobile, and then very specific design for tab, and then for desktop. So you might be using very some sort of like responsive designs where you have one layout, but that is so flexible that irrespective of your resolution changes, your design is like so much fluid to adjust itself based on device resolutions. So yeah, that's the case. And then that's what we have here. If you see this, these are the layout breakpoints where you have the compact from 0 to 599 dp, and then for medium from 600 to 839 dp, which will be basically using for tablets. And then this is for your mobile, this is for your tablets, and this is for your, you can think of like having a larger resolution but having a small screen. So in that case, we'll be using this expanded, and then from 1200 to 1599 dp, you'll be using this layout. And then for extra large, which is like more than 1600 plus, you'll be using this. So people are basically opening your websites on desktop, where you have a larger screen, like 32 inch of displays. For that cases, you will be using this extra large screens. So in the same manner, when you have like a lower, like a small screens resolutions, you'll be using your expanded, which is like from 840 to 1200, like 1199 dp. So yeah, these are the basically breakpoints for your different devices. Now, you must be wondering, like, what are the basically white space and why we need this, right? You won't be designing for end to end, because it's hard for user to interact with your elements. If the element is stacked towards very left, and then it's a little hard because you have to tap on the edge to uh, use the functionality features. And so for that, you always keep some white space that's called margin, or like padding. And in the same way, between the elements you keep some distance, because majorly users will be using their thumbs to press or like to interact with the element, right? For example, let's say you have two elements beside each other, and then they have no space in between, right? So they are very close, like they are very, like kind of stick together. And in that cases, when user want to interact with the second element, but eventually user end up clicking on first elements. Yeah. So to avoid those kinds of errors, we have some space in between the elements. That is called gutter. So well, that we have learned about grids and breakpoints. Now I'll give info about what exactly the adaptive designs are. Now, as we have these are the different breakpoints for different device resolutions, and in the same way, well, adaptive design are basically refers to where you have different layout for different resolutions. So for example, when you are designing for mobile, then you have some different layout, and then you say from 0 to 599 dp, I have this layout. But then when it exceeds from 599 dp to 600, for that case, you might have some different layouts, because well, why it's needed is because it's all about like you have different personas for all different use cases, right? So in that scenario, let's say some of the users might be using tablet, and some of the users will be using mobile phones. So whatever you'll be designing for your mobile, you have some layout which is very common and very simple for those kinds of users who are more into using phones. But like then you have a different layout where you'll be designing for tablets. I mean the users who are more tablet oriented, or like using, or maybe like doing their regular tasks on tablets. So in that scenario, you'll be designing more user friendly for tablets, right? So for those cases, you have adaptive designs, and then similarly goes to your desktops or for like your laptop, right? So in that manner, basically you design a different layouts, right? And those layouts are basically only renders when you have some specific, defined region of like your device width, or like, like your viewport. So for example, if let's say you have layout 1, which is basically for your compact design, and then you have layout 2, which is for medium, and then you have layout 3, which is for basically for expanded version, and then you have similarly for large and then extra large. So well, I mean, there's no much difference in expanded, large, or extra large, because what exactly you do is you increase the side margins. So you have already designed for the minimum, and then what you do exactly in large and extra large is just increasing a white space beside, like from top and from right side of your grid, right? Well, that's exactly the main thing about adaptive designs. Well, you can find several examples, like if you go and search YouTube, or maybe what I will do exactly is like, okay, so I'll just search about like material design, and we'll try to see how does that response. Okay, so I opened a material 3 guideline, and now if you see, I'm opening on the laptop, right? So you have this kind of layout where you have side navigation, like left side navigation, and then you have content, which is like right aligned, right? But like, I mean, inside the right, you have like left alignment of your content, and then you have this layout of your content. But then if you just go into the inspect element, and then if you see in mobile version, you have some sort of like this kind of layout, right? So now it means that for some width, for example, if I just decrease to 60, okay, that's the minimum you can go, right? I'll just try to figure out, I mean, I'll just try to show what exactly at what width your device resolutions or like your layout changes, right? So now whatever you're seeing here is like a responsive design, where basically your elements are stretching itself, changing in such manner where your device is just like as your device width's increasing, it's just like your materials or elements inside your design is just stretching itself so that they can actually fit in the content, or like fit in the defined region, or like width, right? So that's the responsive design. And like if you see at some point the layout just changes, right? So just keep watching. So at 40, change, 920. Okay. Okay. All right. So at 960, basically you have some sort of layout which is very similar to your mobile version, where you have this menu bar, and then if you click on this, you'll get your left menu section, right? And then from 61 to 960, right, you have layout for this defined region. And now, well, if I just increase one pixel more, the layout just suddenly changed into something else, which is this, right? So now what happened here is basically the layout has changed, where you have this side panel where you see all the different navigation items, and then you have your main content element, the right side, right? And then if you see the layout is some sort of like this. Now, as I keep increasing, where earlier if you see the layout below was something like this, and if you go more, then it just like stretching, decreasing, and then you see it's the alignment of this or like the order of these elements are all of a sudden, or like the component has just changed, right? So similarly, well, because it's because of the responsive designs where you have defined some minimum and maximum width for your particular components or like elements. In that scenario, it works in this way. But now, it just increased from goes to 961, right? 961. You have different layout. Well, layout means basically you have some side panel, like side navigation bar, and then you have all of your content element, right? So all of a sudden the layout has changed, right? Somewhere from mobile to this, you have different layouts. If you keep stretching until at some point, you'll see the layout also changes at some point until that defined region, right? So I'll try to just go to that size. I even don't know. I'm just trying. So let's see at what point. I mean, basically, we are just discovering the breakpoints at what point the layout just changes, right? Because that's what the adaptive design says. So now if you see at 294, we have layout some sort of like this for this. I mean, just like think of like it's in a grid pattern where like if I just go to 1295, a layout just changes, right? So now you have a grid, but like in a different manner. So that's the thing, right? So that's what it happening here is like the layouts is changing as you change your width, right? So that's what adaptive design says. And now, all right. So now if I talk about responsive design, well, what exactly the responsive design is? Well, in responsive design, you have just a single layout, but that is just like stretching and adjusting itself in such a manner that irrespective of your design resolutions or like device width, your component and elements just align itself in such manner that it won't break the layout and also keep the consistent design across all the devices, right? So for example, we have seen about this, but like we have also seen something like where we found one responsive design. So if you see like from 61 to 960, you won't see any layout changes, right? So that's what the responsive design are. Basically, there's no layout change. You'll see this menu option, and if you click, you'll get this. And the same goes to if you just decreasing to 960, or sorry, from 960 to any particular width, right? So you see like your elements and designs, or like your design elements, or like your imagery, or like your video panel is just like stretching, its size decreasing and all. And if you see like your content, right, it's like arranging itself, right? So that's what your exactly responsive design are, where you have a single layout. Remember what exactly the responsive design is. Responsive design have a single layout, but it just have a different alignment. Alignment can change, but like your layout structure will always be same. So if you can actually pick any random website. For example, let's say if I just go hymns, for example here, right? So you see this, right? And if you see this, right, this is your website, right? This is the hymns website. Now if I just go and just check its responsiveness, then you'll see like I'm at 738 and it have this layout, right? And this layout is basically consistent across, right? So this is what exactly the responsive designs are, right? Where your layout is not changing, just alignments are resizing, aligning itself. That's it. That's what your responsive designs are. And if you see, there's no layout changes, right? It's just like everything is similar. There's no side panel or side navigation bar. Anything doesn't come right. You have only this single layout, which is basically reflecting all over the places from your mobile to your desktop. You'll be seeing everything same, like the layout wise. That's what responsive design are. And then now probably you have understood the grids, the breakpoints, the adaptive design, the responsive design. What are the difference between adaptive design and responsive design? Hope you have understood what is adaptive design, what is responsive design. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe my channel. All right then, see you. Bye-bye. Take care.